So in my past tutorials, what I realized is that I might have gone a little bit too fast through each of the tutorial steps. So for this tutorial, I'm going to try to go a little slower and then take you step by step through the process. So for today's video, what I would like to cover is the idea of using a password manager. Passwords are a pain for all of us. There are just so many different accounts and then passwords, and passwords change sometimes, different length and requirements. Password combinations are required. So I think all of us have had the instance where we try to enter a password and it's not correct, and we're pretty sure it's correct, and it's just a big hassle. So a password manager can really save us from that trouble and help us organize and manage all of our passwords in one place. Personally, I use a online password manager because I can access the passwords across many devices. However, what I'd like to cover today is actually a local password manager. And that is because some of us may prefer having our passwords managed locally. So, it's stored in one place on our local device. It's not hosted online anywhere. So you don't have to worry about security risks potentially. What if your password manager account gets hacked? Or even just the fact that you don't want to create another account or another service with some company. So the solution I want to recommend and that I'm currently using is called KeePass. So let's go through the steps of setting up KeePass on this computer, and then I'll show you quickly how to use it to add and access passwords as well. So go to any browser, and I'm using Chrome, and just search for KeePass. So it's KeePass, download. Should be the first result that shows up. Downloads KeePass. Click on it. It should bring you to a download page, something like this. So to know that you are looking at the right application, the KeePass icon is a blue icon with a lock in the middle. So this is actually completely free to use. Okay, so to install for Windows, I'm just going to use the setup installer here. But of course, what you can see is you can install for other systems, as well as there are unofficial KeePass ports that are made for other devices. So for us, if you're using a Windows system, we're just going to keep it simple and download the installer. Our download has started and completed. Alright, so here we have our installer. Let's double click on it to install it. I'm going to select English as my language. Accept the user agreement. Okay, and I'm just going to keep everything default. So let's just keep clicking next. Alright, so the installation process was pretty fast. Let's keep the settings again and just launch KeePass. Okay, now I'm going to disable this. Alright, so here is KeePass. Let me make it a little bit bigger. Okay. And what I like to do is I like to pin KeePass to my bottom toolbar here, so you can always access it. So I'm just going to select right click on the icon and select pin to taskbar. Okay, So now this will be on my taskbar always, and I can click on it to get to this application. So right now everything is blank, of course, because we haven't created any databases or passwords. So that's the first thing we're going to do. Okay, so when I clicked new, it will prompt me to create a new database. So think of the databases as kind of groups of passwords that you will create. For most of us, you'll really just only need a personal database, but if you prefer, you can also create separate databases, for example, personal, work project, or a database that's maybe shared with family. And all of these databases are actually a single file. So the file can be moved around to different locations. You'll see how this works in a little bit. So for now, I'm just going to put this database in my downloads folder, and I'm going to call it example database. Right? So you can name it anything you want, like personal, your name, anything. Okay. I'm going to save it. And then it will prompt us to create a master password. So this is the password that you will use to unlock your password database, right? So think of it, this is now the only password that you need to remember. So I'm going to keep it simple here. So you can see the password quality is not very good. So of course what you want is to create a strong password. Okay, oops, I need to actually repeat my password. Okay, so now we're going to create some database settings. So again, there is a number of different things you can do with this, but for us, we're just going to keep everything default, and we're going to click OK. So once we've created the database, what you can see is now you have our example database, and then you have a whole bunch of folders. You also have some sample entries. So these are essentially your passwords and your password entries, right? So there are some samples. Okay, so let's show you how to create a new password. So what you want to do is click on this icon here that's called Add Entry. It looks like a little key. Okay. Once you add entry, you can then essentially provide the things that you want to track. So for example, we want to save our Gmail password. You can put in your username. Maybe it's bob@gmail.com. And then you can also put in a password. Okay. So clicking on these 3 dots essentially just shows and hides your password. So I like to use show password when I'm entering passwords for the first time, so you know exactly what password that you're writing in, and that kind of avoids typos. I'm gonna go very simple here and just keep it as password. That's actually basically it. These are the core things you need to do to be able to create an entry. So you can click OK, and this will be saved. You can also, of course, add an URL. So in this case, it would be gmail.com. Okay. There are also a whole bunch of additional tools that you may want to use in these other tabs. For example, attaching files, customizing the property of this entry, as well as, this is actually pretty handy, of having a history of essentially this entry and this password. The one thing I do want to show you is the password generator. So a lot of the times we want to create new passwords and we want it to be strong, but we run out of ideas of good passwords pretty quickly. So this is where a password generator becomes very useful. So click on this key icon here, and then click on Open Password Generator. So this will allow you to essentially generate a new random strong password. You can select how long you want the password to be. Let's make this 10. And then you can select what you want your password to include. So for example, let's have both uppercase and lowercase. Let's add some digits, and then let's add some special characters. Okay. So once we selected this, let's click OK. Okay. What you'll now see, our new password is something random, and it's a strong password. So you can see the quality has increased a lot from our previous option. I really like this because if you're using this password manager exclusively, all of your passwords can be random and strong. And of course, because you're using the password manager, you don't need to actually remember the sequence. Okay, let's click OK to save that. After you create a new entries, what you want to do is save. So let's click on the save button here. You can also use Control-S. How you can tell is you'll see that by your password file here on top, you get a asterisk. This means that you have changes that are unsaved. Once we click save, this asterisk is gone, meaning that everything is saved. So you can organize all of your entries into these different folders. For example, I can move Gmail into like network, right? So now these are spread into different networks. You can of course create new folders in which they're just called groups. So maybe let's say entertainment. Okay. Great. Oops. So now we have an entertainment folder. So you can manage your different passwords in different folders. Personally, what I really like is really just use the search feature. So with this search box above, you can just type in, for example, Gmail, hit enter, and you get all of your relevant entries. So this is a really fast way, like once you have maybe tens or even hundreds of passwords, this is the fastest way of getting to something. Okay, so now you might ask, how do I actually use the password manager if I wanted to, let's say, log on to Gmail, right? So obviously you can always, double click on this entry and then open it up again. And you can copy your usernames and passwords. But you can also do this much easier by right-clicking on the entry that you're interested in and select copy username, copy password. You can even launch the URL directly from this password manager. What I also use is essentially these icons here. So you can select an entry and then click on copy password, this little icon here, and that will also copy the password for you so you have it on your clipboard. So I can just paste it here to show you. So that was your password. Okay, so finally, to show you what happens when you first open your database again, right? So let's close this down. So now the application is completely closed. So the next time you open it, it will default to the database that you were using, and you will just enter your master password that you've set. Click OK. And here you go. So you have your database again. As well, before I mentioned that the database is essentially a file. So let me show you what that file looks like. So we saved it into the downloads folder. So it's just an example.kdbx. That's the file extension. And the file type is a KeePass database. So essentially, this is the file that you need to keep safe somewhere on your file system and make sure that no one has access to this. And of course, even if they have this file, they also need your password in order to access all of your passwords. So you can also launch your database from this file here. So let me close the database again. And you can also double click on this file and it will bring you to the same interface. So that is really it. That's the basics of using KeePass, creating passwords, managing passwords, and accessing all of your information. The key to successful password management is really not dependent on any tool. Tools really just help you, but it's diligence in managing your passwords. So once you have set on, for example, this one tool using KeePass, what you want to do is every single password that you create, you want to save it into this database. You know, maybe with the exception of very secure, for example, your bank passwords that you want to store somewhere else, right? And then every time you update a password or reset a password, make sure you come into here and update the passwords accordingly. So if you have the confidence that all of the passwords in this database is correct, this will save you tons and tons of time as well as trouble to dealing with wrong passwords or passwords that are out of date. So hopefully this video will help you manage your passwords better. Please leave a comment below if you do decide to use KeePass, or if you are using any other password managers and you really like the experience. See everyone in the next video.